Welcome, everybody. Um, as you guys know, I did a blood test a little bit earlier than I anticipated. I was supposed to do 90 days and then do the blood test, but I wanted to increase my medication to 50 micrograms from 25 micrograms of T4. In order to do that, I felt like it was only fair to do a blood test, a full panel, exact same panel that I did at the beginning of the experiment, so that I can at least capture what happened as a consequence of the diet from 25 micrograms and diet changes alone after about 35 days. So this is the other half of the blood test that I didn't get to show last video because they weren't all released yet. So I'm going to go through everything right now and feel free to ask any questions. So let's start with the lipids because I'm sure a lot of people have questions about cholesterol and stuff, which is normal. So my total cholesterol went up from 488 to 526, which is a lot, but it was already really high. But I'm not as concerned about that. Triglycerides went up a lot from 182 to 294. It's almost like I wasn't fasting, but I'm 100% sure that it was fasting. So this is a huge jump up. It makes me wonder what's going on here. Because I know that the more fat you eat, the lower your triglycerides go. But I think part of the issue here is leading up to this blood test, I was probably not eating enough, and I heard that when you fast, excuse me, or don't eat enough, then your triglycerides can go up. So, but regardless, I don't care. I don't want this to be a high value. So hopefully the next time I test this, it won't be as high because I've never seen it this high before. Now that might sound concerning, but there's a lot of results here that contradict the conclusions you might draw from having high triglycerides, for example. Um, and these are just ratios, so I'm not gonna, this one barely changed. Non-HDL cholesterol went up a little bit from 430 to 460, so it's less than 5%, I would say. My HDL cholesterol went up, so that's good, 59 to 65. I would say that's a pretty good uh, jump in only 35 days. This is interesting. So I did, all the particle tests, and I didn't. I've always heard about ApoB and apolipoprotein A, but I didn't know there was HDL large or anything like that. So before you could see that my HDL large was 6,600, and now it's 9,000. So it's appreciated quite a bit. So that's a good sign. Um, And again, I'm not a doctor or a nutritionist or any of that, so this is just a layman's take on these things. I know enough to kind of take care of myself. Well, a lot of people would disagree based on what I'm doing, but for the most part, I think I have a decent grasp. So when I look at these things, you know, this obviously um, the cutoff is 240, so I have no idea if it went up or down. I'm hoping that this went down, but again, I don't know because it's too high. However, what is interesting is that lipoprotein A, which is a really, really strong marker for cardiovascular risk, it got almost cut in half from 77 to 44. I mean, that's pretty significant. So that's really good. Um, so HDL went up, lipoprotein A went down significantly. LDL particle number is up a little bit. I mean, these jumps aren't that big. My LDL small particle went down from 533 to 380. That's a pretty big jump. Obviously, we want it to be lower. For the record, I've always had high cholesterol my whole life. So I don't know if it's like familial hypercholesterolemia or not. But regardless, it's just always been something that I've had. I don't think I have high risk for cardiovascular disease, but you can never be too careful. I'll probably want to do a calcium artery scan eventually. Medium particle hasn't really moved. LDL peak size also hasn't really moved. It's about the same. My HSCRP hasn't changed. I mean, it's almost zero. So going from 0 to 0 is, again, not a bad thing. Moving on to immune deficiency, creatine kinase. So this was concerning to me. It was so much higher than the top of the range, which is 196, almost 2700, and it's went down from 2700 to 620. That's pretty great as far as I know. I mean, creatine kinase is, I mean, all these markers are pretty nuanced and can be complicated. I think this one measures like muscle damage, and the higher it is, the more muscle damage it represents. Obviously, it can represent an autoimmune disorder. I think it's called muscular dystrophy or something like that. But in my case, I think this is correlated with thyroid function and just overall health as well. I think the more thyroid medication you're on, the more this will probably be under control. But the fact that I can kind of bring this closer to normal with only diet and not change of thyroid medication is pretty interesting. So again, just as a reminder, I was on 25, and when I did the second test, I was also on 25. So 1224 to 131. So that's about 35 days. I was surprised to see homocysteine go up from 18 to 32. Um, but I did have, so this didn't make sense to me at first, but then I realized that I did not get enough folate. And you can see it. I'll show you in the next few tests. But homocysteine relies on folate and choline and all that stuff. I do have MTHFR mutation, so my homocysteine has always been on the higher end of normal, if not above or abnormal, like on the high side. So that's not cool. I didn't have any liver in these 35 days, and that's probably not a good idea because that's probably my only source of folate or my only good source. But nonetheless, I know a lot of people on the carnivore diet who don't eat liver and have normal homocysteine and normal folate levels. So again, it could be a combination of, okay, I'm hypo, so therefore my body isn't keeping homeostasis as easily, so I need more support, more vitamins in the form of liver and whatever. So that's how I'm taking this. But regardless, it's only been 35 days, and but I'll get back to this once I review my B vitamin labs. All right, so liver enzymes not super exciting. Protein was the same. Albumin was the same. Um, globulin, albumin, bilirubin. I don't even know how to pronounce that. More or less the same. Dropped a little bit. Alkaline phosphatase went up from barely hanging on there to 61, which is good. And my AST went from being too high to right in the middle, which is good to see. And my ALT hasn't really moved. It's pretty much within range. So my liver seems to be doing well. So nothing crazy there. Kidney function, that's always been an issue for me with hypo. Urea, nitrogen, so it looks like my, ability to excrete uric acid has improved. That's what I would gather from this. Creatinine, sorry, went down a little bit from 1.69 to 1.58. EGFR. Now, this is something I've struggled with a lot, but you could see it went up in 35 days. It went from 54 to 59. So, that's almost normal. I mean, obviously, I want to be over 100. That's really healthy, right? But I think it'll take time to get to like a. I don't need it to be 100, but at least over 70 would be nice. And I do think I can get there in time. So, button creatinine ratio, calcium. For some reason, my calcium's always been on the high side. I don't know what it means, but I'm still kind of where I've always been, on the high side of normal. Uric acid is low. Now, the funny thing is, people talk about gout and red meat, and they say that you're gonna develop gout if you eat red meat. But here you can see that my uric acid is below normal now, and therapeutic target for gout patients is below 6. So maybe this is because what I'm doing is not traditional carnivore. It's like high fat carnivore. So I'm actually not eating that much protein. I'm eating, I would say 1,500 of my calories are from fat. Um, Maybe even more than 1,500 calories. I would say maybe 16, 1,700 calories from fat, and the rest are protein. Um, but yeah, electrolytes. This surprised me because I thought I had an electrolyte imbalance. I was dehydrating and all sorts of stuff, right? Especially when I did those exogenous ketones. But when I look at this, it's like literally nothing has moved. Almost no movement in any of my electrolytes, sodium, potassium, chloride. And at one point, I stopped taking the salts and the supplements. So, and then sometimes I would take a lot. Like I don't understand, but what they say about your kidneys being really good at regulating electrolytes seems to be true, unless this isn't really a good way to measure. But for me, this is kind of eye opening. And like people would say, if you're cramping, you're low on potassium. But potassium is exactly the same. Dead center. Well, not dead center, but you know what I mean. Exactly the same as what it was 35 days before this. Iron. My ferritin went up a little bit to 28, 199. I think this has to do also. There's a relationship between ferritin and B vitamins, as far as I know. I could be wrong about that, but all these things kind of play on each other. My platelet count went up. I used to have low platelets, and I'm I'm someone who is able to or more efficient at donating plasma, and there were days where I couldn't donate because my platelets were too low, like they were in the 150 range. So, or actually, it was even lower than 150. I think it was like at the 130 range, and you need to be at 150. I don't remember, but I couldn't donate. So, the fact that I'm at 201 now is pretty good, pretty great. And then red blood cells, almost no movement on these. I think being low on these is related to the thyroid. So obviously my thyroid is underactive, and gotta keep that into consideration. Mean platelet volume. Uh, Older platelets are generally smaller than younger ones, and a low MPV may mean. Okay, so it sounds like I'm on the higher side, meaning my body's creating platelets. I don't really understand this too much, but I'm not concerned about this being a little bit on the high side. White blood cells, this is almost the same. My eosinophils historically have always been high. Like I've seen it higher than this even. It did go up a little bit, probably because I came home to a bunch of cats and I'm allergic. But surprisingly, when I'm eating this way, I don't feel any allergies. But that doesn't necessarily mean there's no immune response. It just means that I'm not feeling it actively. So that could be an explanation. But this has gone up and down over time. It's always high. I just have autoimmunity, so it's kind of something I've always accepted. Basophils went up a little bit. For the most part, all of this is the same. Um, yeah, all the same. Vitamin D, this is great. It went from 22 to 35, and this is in a month. So I was very surprised because one, I'm not getting as much sunlight. In fact, I'm almost never outside because this is the winter time. And when I did this test in December, I had spent like 2 weeks in Costa Rica in the sun 24/7. Before that, November, I wasn't necessarily in the sun that often, but I leading up to the test, I had a lot of exposure to sunlight. Now I have no exposure to sunlight, like literally none. I'm inside. It's always cloudy. It sucks. And I'm the type that usually has seasonal affective disorder, during the winter. So for me to see this go from 22 to 35 in 30 days, that's pretty great. So I'm happy with that. I guess it's true what they say about fat being a necessary prerequisite to converting sunlight or whatever to vitamin D. Let's see. B12. B12 didn't move much. I don't like this number. I think that the reference range in America for B12 is too low. Like it starts at 200, where it really should start at 500. So I'd want this. I want to see this like over 600. I think in Japan they started at 500, or maybe they even started at 700. I don't remember exactly, but I think 700 is where you'd want to be optimal. So maybe this is because I wasn't eating a lot of protein, but it could also be related to my thyroid. And here, folate. This is what I don't want to see. I'm borderline low, according to this chart here, and I'd want to be above 5.4. So I dropped from 8.6 to 3.6, and it's probably because I haven't been doing any liver or any organ meats at all. So that's something I'm gonna try to work on. I'll try to include liver like once a week. Magnesium, selenium, and zinc all pretty much the same. Omega 3 index went down a little bit. Um, the index is kind of a weird measurement. I don't know if it's that important. Omega 6 to omega 3 ratio went down a little bit. But what's interesting is that my EPA doubled, 1.3 to zero point 0.6, and my DHA went down. And both of them are omega 3s. But when I tried to research this, I found this website that says new study that measured omega 3s in people's blood found that high levels of EPA were associated with a lower risk of cardiovascular events, whereas DHA appeared to counter the beneficial effects of EPA. So, I mean, it sounds like, and it says here combining EPA and DHA in a supplement may void any potential benefits. So it sounds like EPA is more important and more beneficial, and DHA less so. So if I look here, my EPA doubled, so it went from 0.3 to zero point 0.6. So that to me is a good sign. And then my DHA went down, which is also a good sign because apparently DHA counters EPA. So all in all, I would say this is a win from a cardiovascular disease standpoint. But, I'm not an expert, so I could be wrong there. This is just an ANA screen. Negative, negative. I wouldn't expect this to move. That's pretty much it, though. I know that was long, and I apologize, but for the most part, uh, it seems like a lot of positive trends and some negative ones, like folate. But this can be corrected easily with a little bit of liver. So I'm gonna try to, you know, do that, and then just working to get my homocysteine down, which again would be improved with some folate, and hopefully the B12 will also follow suit when I get more folate in. Um, and then just my triglycerides, I want that to come down, obviously. So hopefully in the next blood test, I'll see a positive improvement in my lipid panel. But for the most part, I'm not necessarily unhappy with the lipid panel. I'm seeing that my lipoprotein A, which is really important for cardiovascular disease, dropped almost in half. And these are like still not being measured accurately, so I can't tell if it's going up or down. I have to imagine it's going down, but I can't be sure. So that's pretty much it. Let me know what you guys think. Um, so far, I'm feeling pretty good. It's been a while since I've posted an update about how I've been feeling, but for the most part, I've been feeling pretty good. I have my hydration has improved a lot. I think it's just kind of an adjustment period, but yeah. So I'll catch you guys in the next video. Feel free to comment, share, whatever you want to do. I don't care. And we'll see how the rest of this experiment goes. Thanks.